Episode 232.
The only way any organization is going to get their salespeople better at what they do in an economical way is by organizing the organization around change and embracing doing it differently.
Welcome, aftermarketers, to Remarkable Results Radio. Listen to learn just one thing from today's episode on your journey to remarkable results. Welcome, aftermarketers from North America and around the world. Carm Capriato here, and you're listening to the Aftermarket's premier podcast, Remarkable Results Radio. And you're in episode 232 with Dennis McCarron, part 2. You know, all organizations are selling organizations. Every member of an organization is always involved in the sales process in some form or another. This podcast is made possible through the sponsorship of Federal Mogul Motor Parts and Garage Gurus. For serious technical training and support, online, on-site, and on demand, Garage Gurus is everything you need to know. Find out more at fmgaragegurus.com. Hey, I want to give a shout out to my listeners around the world outside the North American boundary. Hey, a big salute to my listeners in Australia, Germany, Japan, India, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. Great to have you on board with the podcast, and thanks for listening. Remember, we deliver content that helps you achieve remarkable results. Hey, here's one very special request. I love subscriptions. Yes, I love when you listen through any and every podcast portal or device, but it's always great to have you subscribe to the podcast on either Apple Podcasts, formerly iTunes, or Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, or Spreaker, or wherever podcasts are found. Subscriptions are a connection, just like when you connect with me on social media. And thanks for this. And speaking of social media, thank yous to my new Facebook followers, Gary Bankos, Chuck Studler, Louis Schnabel, and Joa Maryland. And to my new LinkedIn connections, I.W. Koo, Joanne Smythe, Bobby Lickus, and Steve Harbaugh. Great to have you all on board and engaged. Now, the show notes for this episode is at remarkableresults.biz/E232. Now, besides Dennis's bio, you get the key talking points. So if you're commuting and you can't take notes, I've given you a head start on the show notes page. Enjoy. Now, meet Dennis McCarron, the Executive Director of Dealer Strategic Planning, a 20-group organization. Dennis formerly was a Bridgestone National Management Instructor. He joined DSP 20 Group in 2014 as a group facilitator, and he's now Executive Director. Dennis's experience includes 8 years managing retail stores for Bridgestone and 10 years designing, instructing, and facilitating Bridgestone's management courses. Dennis McCarron's first appearance on the podcast was in episode 216. He and I spent some great time together. You won't be disappointed if you go back and listen, and I asked him to come back to discuss sales training. Now, he passionately studies behavior analysis. In this episode, you're going to learn about the sales cycle, who controls the conversation, your power as a listener, why you must only present what the customer will buy or your solutions to his problem, and how to understand objections. I promise an episode for all members of the industry. Now, it doesn't matter if you own a shop, you're a service advisor, are a technician, you are a distribution salesperson, or a manufacturer. This is a universal episode because remember, we're all in sales. Now, here we go with Dennis McCarron, part 2. Hey, I want to welcome Dennis McCarron, part 2. Hey, Dennis, welcome back.
Hey, Carm.
Executive Director, Dealer Strategic Planning. You were with me in episode 216, and we had a great time. We talked about 20 groups, the talent gap, the millennial nonsense. That was so cool. And we talked about managing payroll. And, and I found out that you just loved behavior analysis. And you said you have a background in it. And we were all done with the interview, and we were just shooting the breeze. And I said, wow, you got to come back, and you got to talk to us about the psychology of a sale, because you love that. I mean, if there was a golf game or reading a book on the psychology of a sale, I think you told me you'd rather read the book.
I would, totally. Yep. Yeah, when I started in college, I started with a major in business, and I got into the accounting side, and I just thought, no, this is not for me. It's too boring. And I'm not insulting any accountants out there.
Sure.
it's an opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't fascinate me. So I sat down with the counselor and we started talking, and she said, why don't you try public speaking? And I said, I don't think so, but I'll give it a shot. And that morphed into business communication, which ended up being my major. In public speaking, the part that caught my eye was understanding your audience and knowing who you're talking to and how to change your message and make your message heard. Saying it the way other people understand it, not the way you understand it. So that really caught my eye. I was working at a gas station at the time. I started implementing some of the behavioral tactics that we learned, and it actually worked. So I thought, I learned something in college that works in the real world. That was fascinating to me. Then I started working with a major player in the aftermarket auto and tire. And I wasn't really good at sales. I could get my point across. I could get, half the people to say yes. But as I started developing the technique behind it and the understanding human behavior, my closing rate started to rise a little bit. But what I really noticed was there was less and less conflict in my closing. And the more I studied the technique instead of relying on style, which is what a lot of guys in the industry do, because they've never had formal training in sales, they've gone out and tried stuff, and whatever worked, they try again, and whatever worked twice, they keep, and whatever worked 5 times in a row becomes how they do it. But it's mostly based on their style, and I call it hero syndrome.
Okay.
Where it works for me, and I get a customer to laugh or feel loose, and they buy from me, and it works because I'm me. And then a guy I hire, I tell him, make a customer feel loose. And he's just not that type of guy. And it doesn't work for him. And that's hero syndrome.
Can't you learn how to do that?
Well, you have to strip away the style and get to the technique. And the technique is having the customer talk more than the salesperson. Because when the customer talks, you're learning. When you talk, everything that comes out of your mouth, you already know.
I have to share a quote with you. I learned from a realtor: listen to learn, talk to teach.
Yep.
Does that resonate with you?
It does. But even the best part about teaching is learning.
Yeah.
We would get that, I taught them this. It's like, well, they didn't learn it. So start to figure out how they learn it instead of how you teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started this partnership with a company called Psychological Associates out of St. Louis, Missouri, when I worked for my old company. And they had a system in place. They have the two co-founders of the company are psychologists. And they developed a system that matched with what I grew up learning. And we sort of tailored it to the automotive world, just in topic and shaving a point here, that we're adding a point there. And we have a system that at DSP now we teach that really cuts to the basics and the technique of selling, so that the person that is learning how to grow up in this industry can learn what really makes a difference. And after they learn the basics, they can then apply whatever style suits them, whether they're the jokey guy, the matter-of-fact guy, the cut right to the chase guy. You can build everything off of the basics. It's like trying to learn long division before you learn adding and subtracting. You can't do it.
So this is still all about selling tires, selling service, everything that we're going to talk about today.
Everything that we're going to talk about today is about selling a product to a customer in our industry. And our industry is called a push product negative sales environment. Customers don't typically come in saying, can I have Wagner brakes? They don't come in saying, can I get a Cooper tire? We have to push the product onto our customers. There's only one pull product in the industry, and that's Michelin. People come in asking for a Michelin. Everything else typically is a push product. Yeah, you get the one guy that says, I want Mobil 1 oil, or I only deal with Quaker. But the vast majority of customers don't have an awareness of Bosch, Wagner, Brembo, Fram.
But they ultimately trust your decision, don't they?
They do. So push product. We push the product on them that as professionals we feel is best. Negative purchase environment. Customers do not come into our locations wanting to buy anything. They have to buy something. Yeah. They must buy something, or they're obligated, like an oil change. So we have two things going against us. And I've always said, if you can learn to sell in the tire and automotive world, you'll be a rock star in retail, like Best Buy or Target or anybody else that does any IKEA, any kind of selling. So the negative purchase means, people will line up around the block to buy an iPhone for $800 when they have a $400 iPhone in their pocket. Yet nobody drives by our locations and sees new white walls on displays and slams on the brakes and runs in the room and goes, Jesus Christ, new white wall tires, take my money. Nobody does that.
All right.
We have to overcome those two things. And that makes technique that much more critical. Because when somebody walks into a location and they want to do something, you can make mistakes in the selling process left and right. But when they don't want to be there and they don't want to part with their money and they don't know anything about the product, that's a tremendous hill to climb and overtake. And that all comes down to technique, not style.
I can't wait to hear about the technique.
So the technique starts out with understanding the other person and where they are mentally, where they are mentally comes out in their behavior. So most customers start out as a suspect. They're suspicious about you. They've watched 2020. They've watched 60 Minutes. Their friends, oh, it's expensive. So they're suspicious. Our job is to move them one step forward into a prospect, which is I'll at least tell you why I'm here. And that can happen in 5 seconds. And sometimes that takes 30, 40 seconds. Some people are really suspicious. Once we get them to tell us why they're here, our job is to move them to a potential buyer. And the way we move them to a potential buyer is by asking them questions about what their needs are, what they want in a product, what their desired outcome is. Then the next step is buyer, where they actually say yes to the recommendations. And then the last step, of course, is loyal customer, where they come back again. So a lot of times when you watch an interaction, I don't know the last time you were in a tire store, Carm, but I'm in them a lot. And a customer will walk in as a suspect, and they'll come in and they'll say, I need a set of tires. And that simply stating I need a set of tires means they've moved into the prospecting stage. And the salesperson automatically gives them a quote on 4 tires, or gives them a choice of 2 or 3 different tires. So the salesperson is looking for a buyer, and the customer isn't even a potential buyer yet.
Yeah, I see right away there wasn't any need analysis there. You would typically, at least what I understand and know about selling is you need to start finding out how many miles, family car. I mean, there's so much to know about habits, behavior of the driver.
But I'll challenge you, pick up the phone, call a tire store.
Oh, I'm going to get a quote. I understand. Yeah.
That's all you're going to get. And you're not going to get that. Besides, what kind of car do you have? Trying to find out the size. You're not going to get what type of driving do you do? How was your old set of tires? What are you looking for in a new set? What's your budget? Like just any semblance of a conversation with the customer.
You really are looking to then, when you quote, do you want to quote choice, or are you just going to recommend?
If you have the conversation up front, and a lot of the salesperson's argument is that takes a lot of time, and it does take time. But my counter argument is if we upload the front of the conversation, the back end of the conversation, the more important part, goes by lightning fast. But if you have the right conversation and ask the right questions, and you present the information to the customer of what they want, then they're more likely to buy that product. So you're making a suggestion, but you're simply presenting back to the customer based on what you've told me, either this one product is the only one I offer that fits your needs, or I have 3 choices that we can discuss.
I'm talking with Anthony Frohine, a technical product specialist with Federal Mogul Motor Parts. Anthony, when you're in a shop, are you talking tech as well as product?
Whenever I do a physical training, there is product incorporated part of the whole training overall, but it's to maximize the time, whether it's diagnostics, whether it's inspection, whether it's installation. So that way they understand that, hey, by skipping that extra 20 seconds by putting on this set of brake pads and not replacing the hardware, hey, this might be the reason why that I'm getting comebacks. And usually, being a ex-shop owner, I understand that the first time you get paid, the second time's free.
And so are the techs really starving for this information? Oh,
absolutely. A lot of times you have, we live in an industry where I like to say they cut the roast in half and they don't understand why, but they do it just because they've always been doing it type of an industry. So, to break it through that, they've been doing something for 30 years and they see as they haven't been doing anything wrong, but it starts to open up their eyes to, hey, you know what? It wasn't necessarily wrong, but there is a better way.
So you're really talking to me about an aha moment.
Exactly.
And tell me, when you see that happening more and more from technicians that you're out with, how does it make you feel?
Oh, it's awesome. You really feel like you're giving back to the community overall. But ultimately, the way I tell them, I look at every single vehicle that I worked on prior to, or I had my customer, just like I'd put my family in that vehicle. I look at it as I'm keeping everybody else that much safer because the job's getting done correctly.
Federal Mogul Motor Parts' Garage Gurus is your go-to source for the vehicle training, technology, and answers you need to keep your next job on track. On-site, online, or on demand, the Gurus are here to help keep your business and your career on the road to success. Visit fmgarageguru.com. So your objective is to get someone to become a loyal customer and say yes.
Yes. The whole point of being in business is to get people to buy stuff from you. So, and you do it in a way that gets them to come back more and more. And that comes from the service side of things. When salespeople have a hostile conversation with customers, in other words, I don't trust you. I don't like that you don't trust me. Here's my stuff. Let me ram it down your throat. When there's a combative conversation over what a customer should buy or is recommended, then that customer is very unlikely to come back. You may get that sale today, sometimes in a very bad way. But even if the customer is simply uncomfortable with the way the conversation went, they're unlikely to come back. How many choices are there out there on where to get your tires in your car serviced?
Much too many.
Too many. It's remarkable to me how many customers drive by more convenient locations so that they can go to talk to Billy or Joanne or somebody that they have the tiniest relationship with. That's how important that relationship is. And it's not based on that person's ability to sell stuff. It's that person's ability to show how skilled they are at presenting what the needs of the customers are and letting the customer make the choice.
Dennis, you're out there, you're traveling everywhere. You're in tire shops, you're in service professionals. What do you see? Are our counters staffed with the talent that understands this?
No. The industry has to come a great ways in educating their employees. We have a very tight budget. So number one, we have to increase our margins so that we can afford more training, good training for our employees, repair and customer.
Always training. That needs to almost become a new moniker in our industry. Always be training.
It always be training properly. There's a lot of bad stuff out there.
All right.
That's, I guess, another show. But
all right.
Got to be sending people out to learn new techniques and see what sticks and try stuff. And if they're not expanding their skill set, then life will pass that shop by. If you're still selling stuff the way you were in the 80s, it doesn't work anymore. The millennials are the largest consumer buying group that you're going to be looking at. The techniques that worked on boomers in general aren't going to work on millennials and probably weren't working for Gen Xers, let alone the internet and how that's changed, how customers walk in so much more educated and unfortunately semi-educated on product.
Yeah, so they're coming in with knowledge of maybe how the tire is built and made and an idea of approximate price, yet you're the one who needs to walk them through the needs because they may not necessarily be getting that during their research.
Especially the unrecognized needs that the person hasn't thought of yet.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to a web page, TireRack.com or whoever, and look at the features of the tire. But that doesn't tell you everything that the tire does. First and foremost, a speed rating. Talk about a misleading name.
Do I need that? I mean, you're reading all these really cool things. Is this important for me? And that's where the service professional needs to help you with that decision.
And I love the term service professional. And I really almost want to have a legitimate licensing of a service professional because, and I'll give you a sort of a funny play on words, but there's several levels of selling and professional service giving. And the first level is what I call feature puking. And the customer comes in and says, I want a tire. And the guy, he went to all the classes, he took all the online stuff, and he just pukes everything he knows about a tire.
I call it spewing. Yeah. Spewing. All right. Okay.
Feature spewing, if you want to call it. So we pull him into the office and say, stop doing that. You're puking all over a customer. Pull it back a little bit. Listen a little more. So, and we tell them, be empathetic. So then all of a sudden they turn into a friend and they're really friendly with customers and they have these great conversations, but they go nowhere. And then what ends up happening is the customer takes control of the conversation. The customer does know one thing, price, and the friend trying to be empathetic with the customer discounts the price.
Yep.
So there's no margins to be made on a level 2 salesperson as a friend. Then you have an order taker, which McDonald's has built an empire on. And people make fun of order takers, but order takers have price integrity. Have you ever gone to a McDonald's and you want fries with that? Sure, but can you sell me the fries for 68 cents? They're just going to say no. Fries, I don't even know how much fries are. Fries are whatever, $1.50 or whatever.
Yeah.
So at least order takers give options and they have price integrity. So order taker is not that bad. I mean, many, many giant industries have been built on order takers. But to get to that next step, you have to have that piece, that listening side. So an order taker will do a good, better, best option. They'll do a wet weather, dry weather, high mileage, but it's all mechanical. It's scripted. And a lot of the teaching and training out in the industry is based on scripts. And scripts aren't a bad thing. They're a necessary step towards an improved experience. But you have need satisfiers and consultants. And those are the people that start to listen to the customer. And they start to ask questions and they stay listening until they get the whole picture. You were talking earlier about the story. Everybody has a story. They listen to the customer's story. And this is the part we hone in on the class. When a customer is knocking on your door at 6:30 in the morning and you're not open till 7, they're not trying to be annoying. They have a problem. And you unlock the door, hopefully, and you let them in. And even though you're not ready, they say, I have a flat tire. And what I hear a lot of guys say is, well, my guys don't get in till 7. Well, that's your problem. What's the customer's problem? And I'll hear guys say, oh, she has a flat tire. No, that's not her problem either. Her problem is she has to get to work. So just by listening, I have a flat tire. I have to get to work. I'm really nervous. Look, I'll get you to work on time. We'll figure that out later. Give me your keys and we'll get something going. I'll get you an Uber. I'll put your spare on. I'll rent you a car. I'll drive you myself. We're not open yet. Lock the door again and drive her to work if she's close. Any of those things solves her problem.
Why do you have to be saying that to me? I I am burning up inside. I guess I learned that the customer was king. You did anything. Hey, back in the day, people would come to the house I lived in because they needed my dad to get something for them out of the shop on a Sunday, at night. And I guess I learned that there's nothing more important than helping the customer. So why are we teaching that today?
Well, we are, and I'm not. I have stories. It knocked me down, Carm. If you hear me saying like how great I was, I wasn't the greatest. I have a very deep understanding of the process, and I tried to make the customer number one too. But at the same time, we're told by our bosses and by management or by corporate, if it's a bigger company, we have X expenses we have to manage payroll.
Kidding.
Listen to me.
Don't punch in. You can be here early, but don't punch in till 7.
Right. And that's against the law, but I've heard it too.
I know.
When I first started in the industry, we were paid 48 hours, whether we work 60, 65 or whatever. So you have this conflict in the employee's head about, do I take somebody off a car making money and send them? Like, I had a customer call me, her garage door wouldn't open. And I can't for the life of me figure out why she's calling me. I'm a tire and auto place. But she's a good customer and she was terrified. So I sent somebody over and they just pulled the latch on her thing and got her garage door open, and we gave her a number of a garage door company, but we got a car out. She comes by 2 days later and she says, thanks. And I said, no problem. I said, I really got to ask you though, why did you call me? She goes, well, you fixed my car and my car had a problem. It couldn't get out of the garage. All right, that's a new one.
It's a great story because you're the car guy.
Yeah. For
that woman to connect you to the garage door that wouldn't open was, man, you made it. It was almost like I made it. I mean, I'm at the top of her heap.
Exactly. And we in the class, we talk about, I call them warm brownies. Every good salesperson has a story. It doesn't have to be warm brownies, but that's the iconic symbol. Mm-hmm. Every good salesperson knows the difference between brownies and warm brownies. Brownies means you did a good job with the customer. They went home, they baked some brownies, they brought it back. Everybody was happy. If you got warm brownies, that customer hauled back to your shop so that you could get a hold of warm.
Yeah. Caring to the max.
Yeah, you talk to good salespeople, in interviewing, it's, tell me about your best customer experience. And they talk about like a case of Snapple, or, they went to Boston Market and picked me up a half a burger. They have these stories with these details that you can't make up. Mm-mm. And you'll sit down with a potential salesperson in an interview, and what's your best customer experience? Oh, I got a tip once. Oh, was it near Christmas? Yeah. Why? No reason.
Those are like getting the crystal trophy. I mean, you need to get it from corporate. You just need to get warm brownies from a customer. Same thing.
Exactly. So we talk about the foundation is where the customer is mentally, skill set of the salesperson, and then we match that up to the process. And the process isn't anything fancy. It's sort of the same process with a couple tweaks. With a suspect, you got to greet them. But we have to remember, and a key phrase is, you cannot warm up hostility. And I hear that in a lot of training programs. If, be friendly, be nice, smile to the customer. Well, how about we read the customer? And if they're in a rush, if they're upset, how about we be neutral and just say, how can I help you? And just get right to the point, because their main priority, if they're rushing, is speed, not friendliness. I'm not saying be a jerk. But it takes 2 seconds to read somebody to figure out if they're in a rush. And they don't need the red carpet and the ticker tape parade. They need to get down to business. So we greet. Once we figure out they're a prospect, we explore the information, what is known, what is unknown. And the hard part is what is unknown. After that, when we see them moving to potential buyer, in other words, we've uncovered enough where the customer sort of starts nodding their head or they got the keys in their hand, then we present our options. What our services solve their problems, and which one do they want? And a key here is we never tell a customer what they have to do. It's their property. It's their choice. We present what we offer to preserve or repair their vehicle in its working condition. They're the owner. They get to make the final decision. Our job is influence, not a single step further. The next step is another big area of improvement needed in the industry, and that's managing objections. What happens when a customer says no? And what does that mean? And no means I don't understand. I don't have any proof of what you said, which usually means I presented too early and they don't trust me yet. I don't have a need. In other words, you're telling me what you offer, and I just don't need that right now based on time and money. And the other is value. Yes, I heard what you said. Yes, I agree that it's important to get done, but I don't think it's worth X dollars. You can't always overcome money. If the person has lousy credit, doesn't have any cash in the bank, and doesn't have any friends they can call, I don't care how good a salesperson you are, you're not closing that sale. But what we want to do is get the real issue to the top of the surface. And that's what managing objections means. I may tell you because, Karma, I don't trust you that, I need to think about that. I got to talk to my spouse about that. I got to talk to my wife first. And a lot of people are uncomfortable broaching that objection. And a lot of people do it the wrong way. They'll pick up the phone and say, here, call them now while you're at the store. Well, if that's a smokescreen objection, if I lied about that objection, I'm now in a very hostile situation. I now have to either tell you I lied because I feel pressured by you, or I have to dial a fake number and pretend to have a conversation with someone that doesn't exist. Whereas if I mentally go where the customer is and they said no, and I walk through that process and I can say things like, tell me what kind of objections do you think your spouse would have? Therefore, I can save you time in the back and forth between all three of us. That'll at least give them the opportunity to continue the charade, but I get to continue to explain the process to them. And really what I'm doing is convincing them or influencing their decision.
Explain or explore additional need.
So I may present something to a customer and they say, I have to talk to my spouse about that. And if I say, well, explain to me some of the questions your spouse may have so you can explain to them, that's giving them the added time they need to think about why they don't want to make this purchase. What is really bugging them? Maybe I was even at the best salesperson in the world. Sometimes I'll push too hard. Maybe it gives me time to back off and reassess. But I'm continuing that dialogue instead of getting to that point where I got to talk to my spouse. Oh, okay. Turn around and tell the person to back the car out. They're not buying it. There's a push and pull in a sales process, and nobody's perfect because you're feeling the other person out. And there's no way to be at that perfect point every step of the way. So there are certain checkdowns that we're always looking for in somebody's behavior. And one of those checkdowns is a smokescreen objection. You can never solve a smokescreen objection because it's not real. Somebody says, gee, that sounds like it's going to take a long time. Oh, I'll get you a ride to work. Well, if I'm not really worried about time, I'm just stalling, then your suggestion on getting me a ride to work will never work because that's not really my objection. My objection may be, I don't have that kind of money, but I'm uncomfortable telling a salesperson that I'm broke, which means if they're uncomfortable with me, they don't trust me yet, which means I started selling too early.
So you got to know really when to back off too, and if not, you'll never get a chance.
Back off, but keep the conversation going.
Right.
Now, if a customer becomes animated that, look, I don't want to buy this thing today, and they put their foot down, then you have to respect that. If you want them to come back, somebody did the average lifetime value of a customer and put it between $100,000 and $125,000 between their car, their spouse's car, their kid's car, stuff like that. And, 15 years. If you want that long-term money, you have to respect other people's boundaries and not anybody that tells me they have 100% close. There's something wrong there. Yeah, it sounds like a good number to have a close rate that high, but what's your customer turnover? You know, what stuff aren't you presenting? You're cherry picking what you tell customers they need to do on their car. It becomes a dangerous process. So if I'm getting an objection, I'm usually selling too quickly, and I need to put myself in the listening mode again, which is why and to put ourselves in listening requires questions, which we also call probes. We have to probe why the process just went sideways. And no doesn't mean stop. No means let's figure out what's really going on. Mm-hmm. So the person who controls the conversation in a sales process is the listener. And most salespeople do 80% of the talking. So the more I can put myself in listening mode and collect information, the better I can do to present a product to a customer that they are compelled to say yes to. And the number we go by in the class is 3. If I can collect 3 needs and present the customer my product that solves all 3 of those needs in one sentence or one paragraph, it's nearly impossible for the customer to say no. Because I came into your store, you collected this about me, and this about me. And you have a product that does all 3 of those things. It's really hard for a customer to say no. But when I only have one thing, they can say no.
What if they didn't have the money, but you solved all 3 needs? That's still going to be a pause, if you will.
Right. So if I do the timing of it right, and I'm watching them, and they're in the buying mode, okay, they want to make the purchase, and I say, based on what you told me, this is the tire that has the longest life. It's got the quietest tread, and it's got the best safety rating from Consumer Reports. Those are the 3 things you told me. Here's the tires. Here's the price. If they're in the buying mode and I'm selling at the right time, the real objection is going to come to the surface. Wow, that's exactly the tire I want. I just don't have $1,400.
Is that the time you offer financing?
Exactly. So there's multiple solutions here. If I know we're dealing with a real objection, I probe it and then I'm going to give you the technique, not the style. So it's going to sound clunky, but the technique is this the real objection we're talking about? If this was the only thing left and I could solve this for you, would you buy this product? You would add style to that, but that's the technique.
Got it, yeah.
Probe the objection. If the customer says yes, I test a solution. So I offer a solution in a question. If I offered you financing, would that solve the problem for you? If we were to prioritize those 3 needs and only do the top 2, and I could move you to a tire that fit almost all your needs, but was cheaper, is that a solution? So you maintain price integrity. Okay, the Michelin tire is too expensive for you. I got a Bridgestone that's $300 cheaper for the set. I'm still getting full gross margin on my product. I'm still meeting all the needs of the customer, save the one they're willing to sacrifice. Or in your solution, offering them some financing options. But I can't manage a fake objection, which makes the selling part go a little longer. But when I get to the end, the important part of agreement, and we agree on the commitments that we make, the customer and me, then that part goes that much faster.
So in order to understand the objections, like you said, you've got to be a great listener.
You have to be.
I love your quote. The person who controls the conversation is the listener. In your class and in the passion you have for the psychology of a sale, do you spend a lot of time on listening technique?
It's a 3-day course, and specifically we spend half a day on just listening techniques. And then throughout all the role play, which the class is half classroom, half small group role play, it's obviously sprinkled through the whole thing.
They didn't teach us how to listen in high school and in college or in any business course.
No, school teaches you how to memorize.
Right.
That's what school does. Listening is a life skill that is developed either randomly, which is called non-formal learning, or formal learning, where you actually go and and listen to somebody teach how to listen. And it sounds goofy, but when you look at some of the best leaders of organizations in at least U.S. history, they surround themselves with good people. And if you do that, you're prone to have to listen to them. And then you develop your plan of action. Stephen Covey, which is, he's one of the grandfathers of modern organizations, said most people listen with the intent to respond.
Yeah.
And most salespeople do too, not because they're bad people, but because they have the same conversation over and over and over and over again. I mean, how many times can you listen to somebody who says, my brakes squeak, without automatically going to a brake flush, pads, measure the rotors, here's the price, let's just move forward? Because to the salesperson, it's an ungodly boring conversation. If they've been in the business 5 years, they've had that conversation over 1,000 times.
And they're going to do 6 brake jobs today.
Yeah. But to the customer who is about to go on vacation, is taking their one of their parents to dialysis, who needs to get to a presentation to make a $2 million purchase for their company. Mm-hmm. This is a huge problem. So salespeople need to learn the art of breaking and listening and speeding up to get to the resolution.
I was just about ready to say the word patience, but you just said speeding up. Explain speeding up to me.
So the speeding up part comes when we look at the behavior of human beings, of customers and salespeople. There are points where people want the process sped up.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So I want you to listen to my story, and I want you to understand deeply what my problem is. Once I'm convinced and I trust that you understand my problem, let's cut to the chase and just negotiate the end result.
But that's got to be an art to feel and know that.
It is, but there's science behind it. So, Carm, you're in the business. You ever watch somebody with a tremendous knowledge of how a car works and how an engine operates, and they go to explain a DPFE sensor to a customer, and they're like 40 minutes into the conversation, and they're still talking about ohms and amperages and testing. Mm-hmm. Customer doesn't care about that. Mm-hmm. So we talk about feature, function, benefit. What it is, what it does, and how does it help me? And the industry has done a very poor job of describing features and benefits. Features and benefits, in the way the entire industry describes it, are really features and functions. What it is the name of the thing. What it does is the function of the thing, which most of the industry calls a benefit. But a benefit is why I personally should buy it. And if you listen to my story, what it is a Michelin tire. What it does is it has the longest mileage warranty in the industry. And how that benefits me personally is, quite frankly, I asked for the longest lasting tire in the industry. Or I told you I was upset my previous tire wore out so quickly. But what Michelin typically calls a benefit, a high mileage warranty or 60,000 mile warranty, isn't the benefit. That's the function.
Well, it's how that benefit relates to the customer. The reliability factor, that you're not going to have to come in the shop that often. We're in this time-challenged world. Wasn't it you who said time's the new currency?
Time is the new world currency. So you brought up financing, right? It's my favorite example. A dad comes in, he's sending his daughter off to college, and he wants to get the old Honda Civic tuned up, as dad would say, before he sends her off. We're going to talk about financing, but for her daughter. And if we present the financing option as a credit card, dad's going to say no because he already has credit cards. If we present it as 6 months, same as cash, dad's going to say no because I just accused him of being broke. But if I present it as, here's a credit card for your daughter who's going off to college, and the only thing she can buy with this credit card is car repair and not beer or not clothes or not for her friends, I just bridge that gap between function and benefit. Mm-hmm. And dad's now more likely to sign up for the credit card because in sales, we're always talking probability. How do I increase my probability of a yes? Very rarely going to get to 100 in our business. But if I can get to 70 or 75, I'm batting pretty good.
Listen, I'm all in. I'm ready to sign up. Where's the next clinic? But you know what I think about a lot? I think about, you said it earlier, always be training properly. And I think about this phenomena called the forgetting curve. We go through so much training. We've got a credenza full of beautiful 3-ring binders, and sometimes our computer files are full of PDFs from all the handouts. What are you doing to have the training stick? It goes back to my thought about the forgetting curve. If you really don't use the knowledge that you've been just transferred within 30 days, you're going to forget almost everything that you learned. What's your post-training position?
So the short answer is, for 10 weeks after the training, there's a weekly follow-up. Which we break the 3-day course into 10 segments, and we focus on itty-bitty little segments.
Perfect.
Sort of
okay.
Pep talks.
All right.
We're looking at establishing a website where you can come and post questions, and other people that have been to the class can post answers, or the moderator.
A forum, a continuous. Okay. All right.
But here's if you want the truth on why does that happen regularly? Why does it drop off? There's two main things, I should say. One is the guy that it sticks with, and I've had a lot of people contact me years after the class and say they're still advocates of it. But they got, and I'm going to use this word loosely, lucky in the beginning. They had that one customer that immediately responded to the way they changed doing things, and that sold them on it. So they stuck with it over the difficult days. When adults learn, adults don't like change. Change is good, you go first.
Mm-hmm.
So when an adult goes back and they're met with resistance, they try feature function benefit, or they try listening and they don't get the sale, no matter the reason why, they immediately throw their hands up and go, you know what, this doesn't work. I'm going to go back to the old way of doing things. So our big push is to get the organization behind the concept. When you talk about educating your staff, and whether it's sales or technicians, the organization has to be the champion of doing it that way. It can't be the flavor of the month or the soup of the day. This is an organizational change. You're going to have this vocabulary that you need to use. You need to celebrate successes. You need to sit down and have fireside chats about what went wrong and what could have changed, and ongoing discussion. The only way any organization is going to get their salespeople better at what they do in an economical way is by organizing the organization around change and embracing doing it differently. And you don't always see that. Sometimes you do, and it's such an awesome thing to see a whole organization take that first big 1 or 2 steps into becoming what's called a learning organization. But it takes a lot of guts by the head person to do that.
You taught me a lot.
I mean, if I were to summarize, I would say, understand the skill level of your people, where they stand. Do they adapt to the customer? Whether or not they know behavior analysis or anything, do they present differently to different kinds of customers with the same technique underneath? By far, do you see them listening more than talking? And can you teach them any technique that helps them to stay listening? Ours is called APAC, but you can go to a library and pick up listening skills, studies. And then for the salespeople that are listening to this, please just present what the customer said they were interested in. And if you're finding yourself at a loss for how to do that, that means you haven't listened. And just ask more questions. I promise you, in 20 years of doing this, it will be the best invested time during the day, is to wait until you can present what the customer said they wanted. And your chance of closing the sale will skyrocket.
Wow. Hey, Dennis McCarron, thank you so much for being here for part 2, the psychology of the sale. Now, you know, I'm sitting here in the studio. You're on the virtual screen here, and I saw your passion. And I guess the best thing to pay forward with this great lesson is for our listener to this episode to do something about it. So we always have show notes. And as soon as we assign an episode number, it'll be out there. But I do want to encourage our listener. Listen, I'll type some of these talking points up. So if you're listening in the car and you say, I love that, I wish I could write that down, go to the show notes page for this episode and check it out and do something. Be proactive. Make it happen. Find a sales training class or implement some of these really key pointers that Dennis talked to us about today. Thank you so much for adding such quality content to the podcast archives, Dennis. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Carr.
Hey, Aftermarketers, thanks for joining Dennis McCarron, Executive Director of Dealer Strategic Planning, and myself for this in-depth discussion on sales. Remember, we're all in sales in some form or fashion. I'm sure you've picked up some great pointers that you can use to create your own remarkable results. For a list of episode talking points and Dennis's bio, don't miss the show notes for this episode with Dennis McCarron at remarkableresults.biz/E232. Hey, is it time to email an idea, a suggested guest, or a topic for the Town Hall Academy? Well, send me an email at carm@remarkableresults.biz or head over to the contact page on the website. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or Spreaker, or wherever great podcasts are streamed.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time,